Buenos dias. That's it.
Buenos dias.
Thank you for coming this morning. It didn't get on the weekly schedule or the monthly schedule,
Oh, didn't.
so we put notices up in the elevators and Ken sent out notices. So thank you for being here, or muchas gracias. Mexico is not one of the most exotic destinations that I've ever talked about here, but still, it's an exotic place to me, and it's amazingly different from our own country and only 20 minutes away. So I decided to talk about two cities in Mexico, and there are so many that are fascinating and beautiful and colorful and historic, but I just picked these two, not because I went to them at the same time, just because. So one of them is Todos Santos in Baja California. And from there, we went to Cabo. We had a family reunion there, so you'll see my family. And the other one is in Chiapas, and we'll talk about that when I finish this one. So the mariachi music was to set the mood, and I found my favorite one, Cucurucucu Paloma. It's the sound, of course, that a dove makes, paloma. So, here we go. I hope this works. By the way, you recognize these two people. They're almost symbolic of Mexico, Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo. So this was in 2013, and we started out in Todos Santos. How many of you have ever been to Todos Santos? Anybody? It's a small little artist colony, as you'll see. Small coastal town. I don't have my pointer, but you can see where the red dot is. It's you barely see. It's right above an hour's drive north of Cabo San Lucas, and an hour's drive southwest from La Paz. Anybody been to La Paz? Beautiful city. Ah, good. And Cabo, of course, that's a popular place. Just the two of you. Okay. Because you speak Spanish, of course.
Yeah.
Which is more than I can say. So it's a small city, about 5,000 people. But they do have an annual film festival and an annual music festival. We were not there for either one of those. But that swells the population of the city. And then there are very nice beaches, pretty isolated, about 15 minutes drive away. Although there's serious riptides and undertows, so there are not many people swimming there, but they are very beautiful beaches. Again, another picture of how Todos Santos is laid out. And the quaint, interesting streets, colorful.
Mm-hmm.
This is the main street on the bottom left. I couldn't find my pointer today, but in back of the main street are small, almost alleys that have very interesting little shops and galleries. And you can see, too, how close it is to Cabo, or you could. So these are some of the handicraft shops, owner-operated galleries that have very interesting art and jewelry and textiles in them. And then there are works from not only around Todos Santos, but Guadalajara and other parts of Mexico. Very nice restaurants, sort of hidden away. You would hardly even know they're there. Some boutique hotels, very interesting small hotels, and restored colonial buildings. The hotel we stayed at, I can't remember, found it on TripAdvisor, I think. But it was a beautiful hotel, very sprawling. Not a high-rise or anything. This is the map of how it's laid out. So you can see it's a very small place, just a few streets along the grid. But they managed to have some interesting galleries and some very nice shops. It's hard to describe the hotel, and I didn't take that many pictures of it. On the right is my grandson. My next travelogue, by the way, will be on South America, where I took him and his brother and sister and father and mother on a cruise to South America. But anyway, this is my younger grandson. But the hotel we stayed at was all laid out and designed and decorated by the owner. I can't even think of the name of the hotel, I'm sorry to say, but it was done with such beauty, such care, and the colors were wonderful. But what my grandson is looking at is the inlaid jewels and shells that are in the concrete. The owner, if I remember correctly, is a geologist, and he actually collected these semi-precious gems from all over Mexico and other places as well, and personally embedded them in the concrete. So it's a very sprawling hotel with beautiful rooms, very nicely laid out, and very enjoyable. Nothing to eat there, but otherwise, well, no, nothing to eat, but very close, within a block or two of the main part of Todos, Santos. This is just some of the greenery around the hotel. On the right is a little restaurant I discovered. It turned out to be quite an expensive little place with very formal service and a very elegant menu. And to the left is one of the streets in Todos Santos. On the left here is a little part of our hotel. He had little beautiful touches all over the place, like this little shrine. On the right is my daughter, whom you've seen in several of these travelogues. She's not ordinarily tattooed, but at that time, KPBS was selling tattoos with advertisements from the radio stations, so we tattooed ourselves. From Todos Santos, where we were about 3 days, we went to Cabo. I was also with my son and his family, but they stayed always in fancier hotels than I stay, so their pictures are not here. But Cabo, of course, is a very popular place, known for its drinking, maybe, and its good times. We didn't do that much of it, but my daughter and her family and I stayed in a little hotel by the beach. Cabo, of course, is right on the tip of Baja California, and the beaches are very nice. The activities at night are very famous, and so are the water-based activities, and of course there's a lot to buy in Cabo too. The famous part is El Arco, which we'll see in a minute, the natural archway. And there are about 60,000 inhabitants in Cabo and a lot more vacationers. Here's the picture from which that was taken. I really like Mexican art. I like how colorful it is. This is my other grandson. No, this is a waiter. Oh, this is a waiter. No, it's not my grandson. Can't tell them apart anymore. He has an apron that says I don't use this, but it makes me look busy. So this is El Arco, the arch that's very famous around Cabo. And we took this from a boat trip. We took it at sunset. It was supposed to be very tranquil. It's the sounds of the boat trip. As I said, Cabo is noted for its nightlife and its dancing and singing and its drinking. And it never ended on this peaceful boat trip, which was hardly peaceful because the music was loud and continuous and annoying. But the view was nice. And you can see from the boat, that's where we are now, all these developments coming up. There are tons of condos that people rent for a couple of weeks. And that's where my son and his family stayed, at one of these amazingly luxurious condos around a pool in a development. Here they are dancing, and here's my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter eating on the boat. Oops, so much for that. We had a car and we went around to some of the cities around Cabo. And some of them, because Cabo is surrounded by mountains, some of these are amazingly built on top of these mountains. How people get to their houses, I'm not sure. And then there's a well-known beach with very serious riptides. That's my son and daughter. And this is the beach around this area. I can't think of the name of it. Very interesting. This snake that you see in front of this house, do you see it? I don't have my pointer, but at UCSD there's a snake pathway that comes down from the library. Very similar looking to this. This is a very wealthy suburb of Cabo. And a replication of the cave paintings that are found somewhere in Mexico, I'm not sure where. We went to Yelp to find a place to have dinner in Cabo, and my son found this wonderful little place run by this woman and her daughters. Talavera china is very popular around this area, or pseudo-Talavera, I'm not sure what's real Talavera. So all the dinners were served on these plates, and the food was delicious, but looking at it was just wonderful. So, how many of you know Talavera china? Pottery, actually, it's pottery. My Mexican experts here. Distinguished by its white-based glaze, authentic Talavera pottery only comes from the city of Puebla and the communities of these communities, as the clay is needed and the history of this craft are both centered there. So that's why I'm not sure these pieces, which are very, very popular in this area, especially in Todos, Santos, are genuine Talavera.
I was in Pueblo and saw a factory. Even there, they're very expensive.
Very expensive, yes.
Yeah. They wouldn't use it at everyday restaurant.
Well, that's why I was surprised. This, Edith said that they don't use it in everyday restaurants because it's very expensive, this pottery. But this restaurant used it for all the dishes that we were served. All the pieces are hand-thrown in a potter's wheel, and the glazes contain tin and lead, which I'm not sure makes them very edible on, or cooking, you don't cook on them. The glaze must craze, and I didn't see that. Anyway, 6 permitted colors: blue, yellow, black, green, orange, and mauve, and these colors must be made from natural pigments. So I haven't gotten to Puebla yet, but when I do, I'm looking forward to seeing that factory. And you can buy Talavera, or pseudo-Talavera china in San Diego too. So here's this restaurant. This is the woman that owns it, and she does all the cooking. This halo around her head is not natural. But there is just a regular avocado dip. What's the word I'm looking for here?
Guacamole.
Guacamole, sorry. I've been in Amsterdam a week, and then I went to Dallas for a week, and I've forgotten what I used to know. But the china is just wonderful. Painting that we saw around. I am attracted to these colorful scenes, so I don't know what this is, but it was right around our hotel in Cabo. So we were right on the beach, and it was fun to go out on the beach in the morning and also in the evening when it got very lively there. It's a fisherman's beach. This is a statue, actually, dedicated to the fishermen. That used to be the main industry in Cabo. It's changed quite a bit. Kids would come out on the beach in the morning. At night, there were a lot of people there because there are a lot of restaurants right on the beach. Very popular surfing spot. This is a different beach altogether, but these young men are going surfing. So these are some of the condos and that you see all around the place. There's a lot of money in Cabo, and a lot of people who come for a couple of weeks. For some reason I didn't do this, but we were allowed to cook in our little hotel room, so we asked the hotel guy where the best place was to get food, and he said, well, there's a lot of little grocery stores around here, but they're quite expensive. I recommend that you go to Walmart. So you're shocked. And we were shocked because my daughter lives in Australia and she has never been to a Walmart. It's against her principles. So, plus they don't have a lot of them there. So we drove over to Walmart, and it's actually an amazing store. They're huge. And there are a lot of Mexicans making things like tacos and guacamole and peeling the cactuses so that they could make products out of cactus. It was really quite an amazing experience. Even my very cynical daughter about Walmart was impressed with all the fresh food you could find there. Here's the beach in the morning again. This is a breakfast place right in front of where he's standing, but it was too early for people to be going there for breakfast. These are garbage cans, I guess, but they look so interesting and they are so decorated that I thought I'd take a picture of them. Turtles and ducks and whatever that other thing is. So actually in Walmart they were taking, this is very edible, this cactus, taking the spines off. This is our hotel. Just steps to the beach, but a very inexpensive hotel. He was welcoming us with his bottle of tequila. I wandered around in the morning and took pictures of interesting stores and art and all sorts of things, and that's what I found. It's a beautiful little shrine right behind our hotel. One of the restaurants. A lot of things to buy in Cabo as well. It's my daughter shopping and her kids. Here we are. You can drive to this little village, which I guess, I don't know which one is Cabo, which one is Cabo San Lucas. I guess this is San Lucas. And shop there. This art comes from all over Mexico, not just from this area. This is another delicious breakfast we had. Fresh fruit and granola. Of course, you can have that here. This is the currency with these two popular people. I don't know. I can't think of any currency that has artists on their bills. Generals maybe, presidents maybe, even poets in some far Near Eastern countries, but artists, very unusual. So here's Diego and Frida. And he's not even a very attractive man.
No.
Of course, there'd be more about him if we had gone to Mexico City, but that's another story. So, that's it for Cabo and Todos, Todos Santos, which of course means All Saints. In 2007, we had all been surfing, well, I haven't been surfing, but in Belize, again, my family, and then I went on my own around Central America. And I'll show that slideshow sometime, which is very interesting. Nicaragua, San Salvador, all those places. And I just happened to mention that when you do go from one Central America country to another, you go by these luxury buses, beautiful two-story buses that serve coffee and snacks and everything. air-conditioned, beautiful buses. So my last stop was Guatemala, and from there I went to Mexico, to Chiapas, and I had heard a lot about Chiapas. There's a lot of political stuff going on there, a lot of artistic stuff. And I never wanted to go in the summer, no, in the winter, because it gets very cold there, it's very high. So this was in the summer, July, and it had been very warm in all those other places. And it was complicated to get there. It wasn't simple to get there from Guatemala. But anyway, here it is, and I only, Chiapas is a big state. And I went to some of the other places in Chiapas on other trips, but this time I concentrate on San Cristobal de las Casas, which again is a very well-known place because of its indigenous population. And I must say I found it one of the most interesting cities in Mexico, and even in all the places I've traveled. As I said, Chiapas includes a lot of other interesting places, but we're not talking about those today. And you can see that Chiapas is the bottommost state in Mexico. And it's surrounded by Tabasco, which I've never been to, and Veracruz, which is very interesting. Oaxaca, of course, is fascinating. And then Guatemala, you see that I would have come from Antigua to Chiapas. And then Belize is where I'd started the Central American trip to Honduras and Nicaragua and El Salvador, and then to Chiapas. So Mexico is divided into 31 states and the federal district, which is Mexico City, which make up the 32 federal entities or states or provinces, as they call them in Canada, of Mexico. Chiapas has 122 municipalities. Its capital city, I'm sorry I can't pronounce, but I didn't go there. One of its important population centers, though, is San Cristobal de las Casas. It's in southwestern Mexico on the tip of the country and bordered by all these interesting states. There it is again. So very easy to come from Guatemala to Chiapas. More of these crafts that you see all over Mexico, but many of these are actually made in Chiapas. Chiapas is home to one of the largest indigenous populations in the country, with 12 federally recognized ethnicities, which makes it so interesting there. And as you know, I love ethnicities, so when I was in India, there were ethnicities. In China, there were ethnicities, and especially in Mexico, there are all these ethnic groups. We tend to think of Mexico as Mexicans, but actually it's a much more heterogeneous country than that. So much of the state's history is centered on the subjugation of these people, with occasional rebellions, and we'll talk a little bit about the Zapatista rebellion, which is the last of these rebellions was the Zapatista uprising in 1994, which did succeed in obtaining new rights for indigenous people. And that's what makes the state very interesting to see, these people. And this is a little bit about the Mexican economy, which if you listen too much to the Donald, you might get the wrong impression. And actually, you get the wrong impression anyway, because Mexico, especially after coming from these other places in Central America, looked very prosperous. Sidewalks, streetlights, things like that, which you don't see in these other Central American countries. So, and thanks, of course, to Bill Clinton's developing NAFTA, which did not do too well for our own labor force, but did very well for Mexico. So the Mexican economy is strongly linked to those of its North American Free Trade Agreement partners, especially the United States. Mexico was the first Latin American member of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, joining in 1994. It is classified as an upper middle income country by the World Bank and a newly industrialized country by several analysts. By 2050, Mexico could become the world's 5th or 7th largest economy. And as you know, there's a net import-export of people from Mexico. So now, more people are going back to Mexico than are coming from Mexico. And the economy is doing pretty well there. That doesn't mean it's equally distributed. It has a very unequal distribution of wealth. And some very wealthy people in Mexico who are not so much like our wealthy people. They don't give to charities and they don't support the poor people in Mexico so much. So there's Chiapas, oops, right on the border. Mexico is a big country with so many interesting places to see. So this is a little bit about San Cristobal. It's a town and municipality located in the Central Highlands region of the Mexican state of Chiapas. And so when I said it's cold up there, it's quite cool. The Northern Highlands are pretty high. And it was even cool in July, where it had not been in the other parts that I've been to. It was the capital of the state until 1892 and still considered the cultural capital of Chiapas. The municipality is mostly made up of mountainous terrain, but the city sits in a small valley surrounded by hills. The city center maintains a Spanish colonial layout and much of its architecture, with red tile roofs, cobblestone streets, and wrought iron balconies, often with flowers. Most of the city's economy is based on commerce, services, and tourism. So people do manage to get there, even though they come mostly from Mexico and also from Central America. Tourism is based on the city's history, culture, and indigenous population, although the tourism itself has affected the city, giving it foreign elements. Major landmarks of the city include the cathedral, the Santo Domingo Church, the large open-air crafts market, and the Casa Novala Museum. That all around San Cristobal are amazing churches, and we'll just see some of them. There's significant deforestation around the city because people cut down the trees to graze cattle and also to heat their homes. But it still has natural attractions like caves and rivers. So this is the Santo Domingo Dominican Convent. It's a beautiful church. As I said, it's the facades of the building vary from Baroque to Neoclassical and Moorish, painted in various colors. Even you see milk delivery from local dairy farms, which still use canisters on donkeys. And farmers typically still use horses and donkeys for hauling wood and farm goods within their own properties. So in a way it seems very primitive. Well, it is very primitive. And fortunately it has not been touched too much by modern conveniences and developments. In fact, I don't remember seeing a McDonald's there, but my memory could be playing tricks on me. But there's a beautiful market here in front of the church. Here's the inside of the church. San Cristobal was designated a Pueblo Mágico, magical village, in 2003. It was further recognized as the most magical of the Pueblos Mágico by President Felipe Calderón in 2010. Much of this culture is associated with the city's and municipalities' large indigenous population, which is mostly made up of tzotzils and tzeltzels. Sorry, Spanish-speaking people, sorry. One aspect of traditional culture associated with indigenous groups is the making of textiles, with amber, another important product. Ceramics, wrought iron, and filigree jewelry can be found here as well. There's more things to buy than there are actually people to sell them. People are selling stuff all over the place. It's a surfeit of beautiful things to buy. And you wonder how people make a living, where all this stuff is produced. I suppose in people's homes. There's the City Hall, which has another facade quite different. And they sell a lot of amber here, which is surprising. You know, you see amber in Russia and other places. This kiosk is a lot of fun. There's music there and people walk around there at night. It's very lively. Here's an old church, a little restaurant. There is a jade museum. Come on in. The museum is full of wonderful things that were not taken by the Aztecs. So this is the political group that I mentioned before in terms of the Zapatistas. I don't know if you remember Subcomandante Marcos, but he was a mysterious figure, always seen with this black mask on his face. So nobody actually knew what he looked like, or who he was, actually. In this picture, he's on horseback, but he's smoking a pipe that's sticking out of his mask. But it was a nom de guerre used by the main ideologist and spokesman of the Zapatista Army of National Liberation, and that's what the EZLN is. A Mexican rebel movement fighting for the rights of the indigenous people of Mexico, who do sort of get neglected. Subcomandante Marcos, the character, the constructed persona, the hologram, the colorful ruse, was created by the clandestine revolutionary indigenous committee of the Zapatistas. So there was a lot of drama around Marcos, and also a lot of danger that he created. People were afraid of him, and they took this Zapatista revolution very seriously. Journalists have described Marcos as both a postmodern and new Che Guevara. In his military capacity as sub-commander of the Zapatista Army, he led Otra Campaña, the other campaign, concerning the community autonomy and the social political rights of Los Indios de Mexico, the Indians of Mexico. And they are wonderful, colorful people there that you see all over Mexico, but especially in Chiapas. So on May 25th, 2014, which is recent, he published a letter. This is not, this is him in 1996, which was the height of the Zapatista rebellion. But in 2014, he published a letter where he announced his last public appearance. He mentioned that this Subcomandante Marcos personality has been a hologram, and the EZLN does not need his image anymore. He died shortly thereafter, and I don't remember the circumstances, but I guess he, like the rest of us, had gotten older and had accomplished quite a bit for the indigenous people, not only of Chiapas, but of the whole country. So let me tell you some more about this. It may not interest you, but the Zapatista Army was an armed revolutionary group based in Chiapas, which is one of the poorest states of Mexico. Since 1994, they've been in declared war against the Mexican state, though this war has been primarily nonviolent and defensive against military, paramilitary, and corporate incursions on their territory. It was very concerning to the people in Chiapas, and many of the people in Mexico have had incursions of these very wealthy groups in mining and other kind of exploitations of the people of Mexico. Their social base is mostly indigenous, but they have some supporters in urban areas as well as an international web of support. It was very interesting to see in their propaganda, they talked about the Palestinians and other oppressed minorities, indigenous minorities, that they were in connection with all over the world. Their main spokesman was Marcos, also called Delegate Zero in relation to the other campaign. He was not an indigenous Mayan person. Of course, you see many Mayans in Guatemala. The group takes its name from Emiliano Zapata, the agrarian reformer and commander of the Liberation Army of the South during the Mexican Revolution. And he sees himself as Zapata's ideological heir. And of course, Che Guevara, his picture with Marcos's picture is seen especially in Chiapas. So their ideology combines libertarian socialism, libertarian municipalism, libertarian Marxism, and indigenous Mayan political thought. They align themselves with the wider anti-globalization, anti-neoliberal social movement and seek indigenous control over their local resources, especially their land. The New York Times called the Zapatista movement the first postmodern revolution. Makes me think of Bernie Sanders. So here's some, I'm not sure they're Zapatistas, but they are people who look pretty angry. And you could well imagine that they would have a revolution, or I don't think they do very well as far as jobs are concerned. And here's their logo. You can see in their logo, where my pointer is, but you can see that there are Palestinians in there, Arabs, and other people who also are fighting wars of liberation against us, the 1%. This is their language, Celtal language. So about half the population doesn't speak Spanish. They speak these other indigenous Mayan languages. Of course, they're unintelligible, but at least they're written in Arabic letters. This train schedule, or transportation schedule, is in several different languages, including Spanish. And that's a necessity there in Chiapas to keep up with everybody with different languages. I love this picture. This picture sort of matches the 5 guys on the bench. And as you can see, at least one of the women is selling things that she probably has made herself. They also look very Mayan, if you remember Mayan art. They look like it come right from the Mayan statues. Of course, there's a lot of Mayan goings-on in Guatemala, including in Chichicastenango, which is the market in Guatemala, which is basically a Mayan market. They look like some of the people who work here, actually. This is a store with an abundance of things to buy. But as you walk along the streets, there are women like those 2 women selling things, heads full of things, lots of things. Same thing is true in Guatemala. It must be a major home industry to be making these beautiful, beautiful things. So more about Chiapas. Population is about 5 million people in the state, and it's the 8th most populous state in Mexico, with a large growth factor. So as of 2010, 78% of Mexicans, 78% of people in Chiapas live in the urban communities, with 22% in rural communities. Birth rates are still high in the state. They've come down in recent decades from 7.4 per woman in 1950. And last time I talked about birth rates, I think we were talking about Yemen, which still I think has a average birth rate per woman of 8.1 children. So 7.4 is on the high end, but it's come down. But there's still significant population growth in raw numbers, and of course it means that about half of the state's population is under age 20, with an average age of 19, which has got to mean large unemployment. And a lot of unskilled workers. I don't think the educational system in Chiapas is anything to brag about. So more people migrate out of Chiapas than migrate in, which is not surprising, with immigrants leaving for all these other neighboring states, and Mexico City, and of course the United States. For a long time, Catholics remain the majority, but their numbers have dropped as many have converted to Protestant denominations in recent decades, and that's true in a lot of places where Catholics had the stronghold, and even in China, where there was no religion, Protestant denominations are moving in. And in Eastern Europe, where communism was popular and there was no religion, a lot of these Protestant denominations are moving in, and a lot of them are evangelicals. So now about 40% of the population in Chiapas are Presbyterians, which is sort of surprising. This is a wedding procession. Very expensive truck there.
The oil doesn't have much effect on the economy.
Oil?
Yes.
Did you say, Archie?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think there's much oil there. I never heard of that. I don't think so. I don't.
The
I could be
flowers
wrong.
up on the hood.
Here's the funeral. And you can see there's low-lying buildings, some of them covered with this corrugated material. And the buildings are very simple there. I stayed in a very simple hotel. But there's another beautiful church.
Is there wealth there? Are there wealthy people there?
If there are wealthy people there, I didn't see anything that looked like wealthy neighborhoods. I didn't see any fancy hotels. I didn't see any fancy cars.
Except that
So I saw a lot of poor people that looked like these people on the street. No, I think it's not a place where people with a lot of wealth congregate. Yeah.
Do they have any industry?
Well, this tourist industry, of course, is big. Amber is big. It's agricultural. I think they are pretty self-supporting agriculturally. It was very tempting to stay there and learn Spanish. There are a lot of Spanish schools for Westerners who want to learn Spanish, and that would be a good place to learn it. I don't know about the accent there, but they were very friendly-looking schools on the main street and other places. There are a lot of nice little galleries like this one. And of course, Mexican bakeries are very well known. A lot of us go to Tijuana to collect our bakery goods, but this one was pretty spectacular. You could hardly see her behind the counter there. As my daughter often pointed out, you can make a lot of things with white sugar and white flour. Not necessarily very healthy, but very delicious. It's a little cafe, and in my hotel or someplace. This is the main street. Another beautiful church. These churches are amazing because they're a combination of Catholic churches and indigenous culture. I thought I had taken pictures of one church which was all pine boughs on the floor and flowers growing in the church, but I can't find it. I don't know where that is, but they're beautiful churches. There's another one. You can see the natives there. I think that's the one we saw, the Santo Domingo one. There's people selling things on the street. I love Mexico because you can eat all the time. Delicious things, unless you have a phobia about eating things off the street, which I don't. This is a beautiful altar, which didn't get very good photographed. This church is fabulous. The architecture is so different from other churches in Mexico.
They call her.
Oh, that's what she was cooking up there. What is that? Peppers, corn, Indian corn.
Do you eat the food there on the street?
Oh, I do. Do I eat the food on the street? I do, yes. I used to go to Mexico, sort of as basic training before I went to India. Get my stomach used to all kinds of bacteria and then go off to where they have real bacteria. I'm very lucky to have sort of a steel stomach. I found this nice little restaurant to have breakfast in. It's cute. Oh, Burger King. Oh, sorry, there is an incursion, yes. But at least they had the decency to decorate it nicely. There's the Center City. Another church with a market in front of it. And it's just beautiful. I love this church. Here's people selling, I don't know whether it's their wares or wares that they buy, I don't know how that happens, but she's obviously knitting something. Of course, you see these kind of people all over the place, especially in, ironically, in San Miguel de Allende, which is about 90% Americans. But these Mexican women are sitting on the streets, not with their wares so much as with their babies. I hate to see that. He's got wares. She's got wares. I suspect she or her family knitted all these. And you can still eat, drink, and be merry there. Dos Equis. And you can also do horseback riding around San Cristobal. Another little church. Typical sort of thing to see. She may be having 7 children by the time she's 25. She may already have.
What's their lifespan, do you know?
Their lifespan, no, I didn't look that up. I don't think it's very long. He's selling everything. And he's got everything on, his hats and his vests and everything. I think actually that particular vest he has on is from Oaxaca. I forget what's going on there.
Making
Making
tortillas.
tortillas, yeah.
She's making tortillas.
Yeah.
I don't know, she's putting it in a press or something.
That's
She's got cheese there
That's
and
beautiful.
salsa and avocados.
It would make a wonderful painting.
Yeah. And a beautiful blouse that she has on.
They love color.
They look colored.
They love color.
They love color, I know. That's what's so wonderful about Mexico to me is how colorful it is.
Avocado.
Oh,
I'm not sure what's going on there. Obviously, she is a gringo. Showing the kids her camera, I guess.
picture probably.
Look what the kids are wearing. The girl's so pretty.
There's no manufacturer. Everything is handmade.
Is everything handmade? I don't know. There may be factories making this stuff. I'm not sure. But what she's doing is handmade.
Yes.
So Chiapas is about 13.5% of all of Mexico's indigenous population, which is saying a lot. It has been ranked among the 10 most Indianized states, with only these other 3 states, including Oaxaca and Yucatan, having been ranked above it between 1930 and the present. Here's men wearing these beautiful things.
Oh my.
That's Actually, I bought very little in Chiapas because I couldn't carry anymore. I've been traveling for a month and I was traveling light. Oh, I did buy a jacket because I was cold. Yeah, beautiful jacket. I should have worn it. It's amazing to me how a country can develop such good artisans. Especially muralists. Muralists are a thing in Mexico that you don't see necessarily in other places. This church is spectacular. This is the one I thought I had more pictures of, but I don't. It's on the outskirts of San Cristobal. Viva el Pueblo, of course, means long live the people. The indigenous peoples have been historically resistant to assimilation into the broader Mexican society, with it best seen in the retention rates of indigenous languages and the historic demands for autonomy over geographic areas as well as culture domains. Most of the latter has been prominent since the Zapatista uprising in 1994, so people now are very proud of their indigenous heritage. It's not something to be ashamed of, and they keep their languages. They don't want to assimilate into modern culture or even Mexican culture. I think this is the church with the pine boughs on the floor. Sorry, I don't have a picture. Most of Chiapas indigenous groups are descended from the Mayans, of course, which you see a lot of in Guatemala, speaking languages that are closely related to one another, belonging to the Western Maya language group. The state, that is Chiapas, was part of a large region dominated by the Mayans during the Classic period, which have traits in common such as syncretic religious practices and social structure based on kinship, very large families there. And these are the most common Western Mayan languages which are still spoken, which I can't even pronounce. And of course, language maintenance has been strongest in areas related to where the Zapatista uprising took place. So because of the uprising, there's greater pride in the language and the culture of the indigenous people there. Countryside. That could be in India, but it's not. Some of this we see very commonly. We go to Tijuana, just cross the border, and there it is. But some of it is pretty unique to the Chiapas area. So, that is, what does that mean, help, Edith, somebody?
Never again in Mexico without us.
Without us.
Without us.
Never again in Mexico without us. Okay, and that's from the National Indigenous Peoples Congress. So that's it. That's my Mexican slideshow, and thank you very much. Anything you want to talk about?
I have a